I'm Ava, 34 years old, and I live with my spouse, James. My father-in-law started the company where both of us work. Even though he is retired, he managed to build a little construction company from scratch to an enormous enterprise with an astounding $250 billion in revenue annually. Strategic purchases helped him to strengthen the company's standing in the industry. In spite of his sporadic aggressiveness, his extraordinary business sense is highly esteemed. James was raised in affluence and has a kind disposition, but I worry that these qualities would not be enough in the cutthroat world of business. James was raised to succeed his father. Although kindness can seem charming, it frequently translates into indecision. I've started to have my doubts about his capabilities as a CEO as well as a husband recently. He has admitted that he is unfit for the position and has stated that he would rather have a ceremonial role than actual authority. On the other hand, my father-in-law admired my decisiveness, which is something I take great pride in. My father-in-law insisted that I join the company, even though I had originally intended to quit my work at the bank and become a stay-at-home mom. I was initially viewed with suspicion because of my family connections, but I gradually gained respect in board meetings. But my constant offering of essential information eventually prevailed. Even though James's sporadic attendance was considered acceptable overall, while James may lack the assertiveness required for leadership, I find myself stepping into a role of influence within the company, drawing upon my financial management background and decisiveness to contribute effectively. Returning home from a meeting one day, I found James lounging in front of the TV. "Why didn't you attend today's meeting?" I demanded, my frustration evident. "You're a crucial member, you should take it seriously." Without a hint of remorse, he replied, "Even if I attended, I wouldn't really understand the discussions. Besides, the board members prefer you, so there's no issue, right?" His nonchalant attitude stung, and I couldn't help but wonder if my involvement in board meetings irked him. Despite his remarks, my father-in-law had been mentoring me in the intricacies of business, seemingly grooming me as his successor. I found myself increasingly enjoying the challenges of management, striving to meet his expectations. About 2 years into my attendance at meetings, my father-in-law retired completely. In his absence, the board members turned to me for major decisions, sidelining James. I had hoped this would motivate him, but instead, he grew more detached. His presence at the office dwindled, and he'd disappear by noon, opting to spend the rest of the day at home. Meanwhile, my responsibilities at the company multiplied, with the board's increasing reliance on me. I found myself handling tasks akin to a CEO's. Despite the mounting pressure, I remained committed to driving sales and profits for the sake of our employees. As our hard work began to pay off, sales surged, and I became even more invested in my role. Conversely, James seemed to lose interest in his work. Our conversations at home dwindled, and tension crept into our relationship. Then, one day, James mentioned casually, "I ran into your sister Megan today, and we had lunch together." Megan, 2 years my senior, had recently gone through a messy divorce due to her infidelity, which had caused quite a scandal in our family. Since I was busy at work, James went to my parents' house to mediate Megan's marital disagreement. Megan herself praised him for his ability to calm her husband down with his kind upbringing and composed manner. "Your husband is truly remarkable," she said. "He managed my husband's rage so skillfully." Megan seemed to have a different opinion of James after this occurrence. She may have thought of him before as just a rich, erratic man, but now she considered him to be a worthy person, possibly even a desirable catch. Megan, who is divorced and currently single, probably thought James would make a good partner because she liked wealthy guys, but I was so focused on my work that I was unable to imagine such a thing. Unbeknownst to Megan, James lacked true managerial authority and was only a business figurehead. Her ex-husband had once boasted about his qualities at their wedding, implying that I was envious of him. He was a successful man with charm and refinement. James approached me 3 months after he described his lunch with Megan, his manner unexpectedly solemn. He started, "Ava, I need to talk to you," which made me feel anxious. James shocked me by revealing that Megan was carrying his kid and by stating that he wanted a divorce. Startled, I found it difficult to express my thoughts as James proceeded, detailing Megan's intention to delve deeper into the subject on our upcoming day off. I said to him, "So, you want to marry my sister?" In shock, with a concerned look on his face, James took a moment to answer. With his customary indecision, James said, "It's not that I want to marry her, but if she's having my baby, I guess I have no choice, I replied, sighing. I guess it's unavoidable if she's carrying your child. Let's talk about this when she gets here. We were unable to come to a resolution as a team, so I decided to meet with my sister directly to resolve the issue. I felt obligated to confer with my father-in-law about the company's future. Even though I had already made up my mind to file for divorce, I had been heavily involved in its operation as the founder's daughter-in-law, but getting divorced might break that bond. When I went to my in-laws' place the next day, I told my father-in-law about James's disclosure. My father-in-law reacted sharply, while my mother-in-law seemed happy at the possibility of becoming a grandma. With a glare, he stopped her, making it clear that business management, not family issues, was his top concern. After deliberation, my father-in-law addressed me with a smile, stating, Neva, I want you to continue your involvement in the company's management as you have been. I don't care about James. I'll take responsibility for him. Let him do as he pleases. It became apparent that my father-in-law valued the company's management more than his son or grandchild. Despite his retirement, my father-in-law, as the founder, still held considerable influence in the company, with most of the shares under his control. Executives dared not oppose his decisions. Given my growing interest in my work, I was hesitant to relinquish my role. With my professional matters settled, I prepared to discuss the future with my sister. On our scheduled day off, she arrived at my house with a cheerful demeanor. Ava, it's a shame you couldn't have a baby. I'll provide you with ample consolation money. Please leave this house immediately, she said with a smile, oblivious to the complexities of my situation. With an air of triumph, she spoke up, glancing at my husband, who remained silent, merely listening to our sister's conversation without uttering a word. Despite being the instigator of the problem, I was taken aback by my husband's indifferent demeanor, and I suggested calmly that divorce was an option, though we needed to address matters of alimony and property division with the assistance of a lawyer. Turning to my sister, I couldn't resist a touch of irony as I remarked, I never imagined you would fall for someone like James. She shot me a stern glare momentarily, but quickly composed herself. It dawned on me then that true understanding transcends mere appearances and genders. Suppressing a chuckle, I quipped, well, it seems like you've grasped my husband's inner self perfectly. Congratulations, and may you both live happily from now on. My sister's notion of my husband's inner self seemed fixated on wealth, perhaps assuming he held a prominent position in my father-in-law's company. However, it was evident she hadn't gleaned any insights from him during our discussion. As the conversation drew to a close, my sister announced her intention to move in with us and promptly arranged for a moving company. Oblivious to my prearranged plans for a new apartment, anticipating her impulsive nature, I had already made preparations, including hiring a lawyer to handle property division and alimony claims. The following day, negotiations commenced, with my lawyer representing my interests alongside my husband and sister. Despite my husband's continued indifference, my sister expressed her willingness to pay whatever alimony I requested. Seizing the opportunity, my lawyer also pursued alimony from her, citing her ongoing payments to her ex-husband. Regarding the division of property, my sister eagerly asserted that the mansion belonged to James's family and should be excluded. However, our lawyer responded dispassionately, explaining that the property belonged to the company and its fate would be determined accordingly. It appeared that even my husband had assumed this house belonged to his father. Is that so? I thought this house was Dad's, he remarked casually. On the other hand, my sister seemed startled and directed her frustration at the lawyer. Wait a minute, does that mean I can't live in this house? She demanded, in a matter-of-fact tone. The lawyer explained, since it's company property, you can continue to live here if the company allows it. My sister visibly relaxed at this clarification. Oh, you should have said that earlier. It'll be fine. Since James, the president, will be living here, she exclaimed. The lawyer, momentarily taken aback, burst into laughter. What are you talking about? Ava is the president, not James, I interjected, unable to contain my amusement. My sister turned to my husband in disbelief, exclaiming, James, you're not the president. Stepping in to clarify, I explained to my sister that James held the role of advisor without executive rights, while I held the position of executive director and president. Thanks to my father-in-law's decision, despite receiving an executive salary due to his father's arrangement, my husband didn't actively contribute to the company, which was more of a pity than a privilege. As for our home being company-owned, my responsible father-in-law had always charged us rent, though I had regarded it as a standard rental property amidst the laughter. The lawyer asked if we could continue renting the house to James. My sister, fixating on the notion of rent, objected, suggesting it should be made free since it belongs to the company. The lawyer, still chuckling, presented the rent amount. Amused by her suggestion, she was taken aback by the figure, as was her husband James, who appeared to be hearing about it for the first time. I guess a house this big does come with a high rent. I can't afford that with my salary, he admitted. Indeed, his executive compensation would barely leave any money behind after paying such rent. Their living expenses would become increasingly difficult to cover. Over the 5 years of their marriage, James had depleted his modest executive compensation, while her own salary vanished into high rent and living expenses. There were hardly any assets left, and splitting their savings seemed the only viable option for asset division. After the lawyer departed, my sister, now aware that the mansion she had hoped for was merely rented, felt utterly deflated. James, however, maintained his usual grin. I suggested, "Why don't we vacate this place and return to your parents' house? Your mother was so thrilled about the pregnancy news." James agreed, but I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of considering the opinion of a man who was soon to be my ex-husband. Though I began to worry about whether this unreliable man could effectively raise a child, I decided to leave it as none of my business. Turning to my sister, who seemed to have forgotten about her own alimony, I asked, "Are you okay with the alimony payment?" "Sis, you seemed pretty confident, but you're also paying your ex-husband, right?" She was stunned by this reminder, her face suddenly snapping back to reality. "Alimony? I have to pay it too," she exclaimed, seemingly oblivious to the earlier discussion. "You said I'll give plenty of alimony, but you weren't expecting me to pay it, right?" "My salary is really low." James and my sister exchanged surprised glances, but as I observed them, I couldn't help but feel the urge to burst into laughter. Already having obtained signatures on the divorce papers and alimony request documents, I couldn't help but find the situation somewhat amusing. It didn't affect me personally, but witnessing the strained relationship between James and my sister was disheartening. My ex-husband, who had remarried my sister against my warnings, had returned to his parents' home. Unfortunately, ongoing conflicts erupted between my sister and my ex-in-laws, primarily fueled by the falsehood of her being pregnant with my ex-husband's child. His mother, longing for an heir, was furious, while my father-in-law harbored long-standing animosity towards my sister for what he perceived as her role in taking his son away from me. Despite not having spoken to my sister, my ex-father-in-law continued to support James and me financially, fulfilling his alimony obligations. However, my sister, desperate for financial aid, pleaded with him to cover her alimony too. His response, dripping with disdain, made it clear he refused to acknowledge any paternal role towards her. Frustrated and unable to achieve her desired outcome, my sister vanished suddenly, leaving my ex-husband's family home without a word. Her decision to marry my ex-husband seemed driven solely by the desire to alleviate the burden of alimony, a move that appeared imprudent. Although my ex-husband briefly entertained the idea of reconciliation, his father's stern rebuke reminded him of his inability to shoulder familial responsibilities. As for me, I had long ceased to entertain the thought of reuniting with my ex-husband. His infidelity with my sister and his indifferent demeanor during our discussions shattered any lingering faith I had in him. Meanwhile, his fall from grace, losing his executive position and resorting to temporary employment, only affirmed my decision to move on. I remained steadfast in my role as CEO, prioritizing my company above all else. The divorce papers symbolized closure, signaling a definitive end to a chapter of my life. Despite the challenges, I found solace in focusing on the success of my company, viewing it as my foremost commitment akin to a marriage, dedicated to the well-being of my employees. Throughout this journey, I found support and guidance from my ex-father-in-law, maintaining a bond built on mutual respect and shared interests in the aftermath of divorce. I embraced my independence and resolved to chart my own path forward, with no intentions of remarriage. My dedication to my company And the relationships I've nurtured along the way serve as pillars of strength, anchoring me in this new chapter of my life. I asserted my rights. The severance pay and savings were rightfully mine. You should apply for welfare, I remarked firmly. We've been married for 30 years, during which time I served a domineering husband, even caring for his parents while enduring their bullying. There's no compassion left for him in this divorce agreement. Then, I made an unexpected announcement. There's someone I'd like you to meet. My husband's complexion paled as he glanced at the man sitting beside me. My name is Emily, I introduced myself, breaking the tense silence. I'm a 60-year-old housewife. I married my husband, Daniel, 30 years ago. Back then, I was in my 30s, long past what society deemed prime for marriage. I had resigned myself to the label of woman left on the shelf. But then, an arranged date was proposed, and that's when I met Daniel. Daniel, the same age as me, was shy and not very adept at conversing with women, being equally shy and inexperienced in romantic matters. I found solace in his candidness and sincerity. We agreed to continue seeing each other, and our relationship blossomed smoothly. Emily, will you marry me? Daniel eventually proposed, and I happily accepted. The year following our first date, Daniel and I tied the knot and began our life together in an apartment. However, it wasn't long before I started noticing a side of Daniel that I hadn't seen before we married. He embodied the archetype of a traditional father figure from the 80s, reserved, serious, and unwavering in his routines. He would leave for work punctually every morning and return home at the end of the day. His demeanor grew increasingly domineering, insisting that I follow 3 steps behind him. However, there were occasions when Daniel would return home late, having indulged in drinks with his colleagues. During these moments, he'd regress into a childlike state, pleading for assistance in removing his clothes. Strangely, I found even these antics endearing. A year into our marriage, I became pregnant and welcomed our daughter, Emma. When I was 32, Emma was indeed a bundle of energy, keeping me on my toes from the start. While I was still recovering in the hospital and nursing Emma, Daniel proposed an idea that we should move in with his parents once Emma grew older. He argued that our current apartment would become too cramped, but living together would save on rent, and his mother could assist with caring for Emma. Seeing the apparent practicality in his proposal, I agreed. Little did I know, this decision would mark the beginning of my misfortune. Why did you give birth to a girl? She can't be the heir. My mother-in-law would shame me, her disapproval evident from the start. To exacerbate matters, my father-in-law would make crude remarks, suggesting that we should keep trying for a boy and throwing sexually inappropriate comments my way. Confounded by their behavior, I sought solace in discussing the situation with Daniel. However, he would dismiss my concerns, brushing them off with a curt, "Don't bother me with such matters." Every time he returned home exhausted from work, the relentless bullying from my in-laws compounded with my introverted nature and late marriage, making each day feel like an uphill battle. I felt a sense of insecurity and found myself unable to assert myself in front of my in-laws. This situation had persisted for nearly 3 decades, during which I had been dutifully caring for them. Emily, you still haven't prepared my meal, you slowpoke, scolded my mother-in-law, her words a familiar refrain. She had been grappling with dementia, often repeating herself. Meanwhile, my father-in-law had become bedridden, struggling to communicate. My husband, Daniel, was conspicuously absent in our bustling household. "I'm home, Daniel," I called out, but he seldom appeared before late hours and often skipped dinner, opting for a quick bath in bed. Conversations between us had become a rarity. I had clung to the hope that once the burden of caregiving eased, Daniel and I could finally enjoy a peaceful life together. His impending retirement, just 6 months away, seemed like the light at the end of the tunnel. But then, everything changed. "Emily, can we talk?" Daniel's unexpected summons stirred a flicker of optimism within me. Rushing to his side, I inquired eagerly, "What's up?" "Daniel, I've decided to quit my job," he announced abruptly. My heart sank as if plummeting from a roller coaster ride. "What do you mean? Is everything okay at work?" I stammered, struggling to comprehend the sudden revelation. "It's my life, and I'm tired of this routine. I want freedom," Daniel asserted firmly, his tone unwavering. His words left me reeling, my mind unable to process the abrupt shift in our plans. "But what about your parents, and our finances?" I protested, attempting to rationalize the consequences of his decision. "Don't pretend you care. You've always had your eye on my money," Daniel accused sharply, his accusation cutting through the air like a knife. I won't give you a penny, not even from my retirement payout. His words pierced through me, leaving me shattered and uncertain about the future. Daniel's statement only added to my confusion, leaving me utterly bewildered. No. I mean, realistically, we don't know how long the caregiving will continue. I struggled to make sense of his accusations. So that's how you're going to play, Dom. Always bringing up caregiving when you're asked what you do with your spare time. Do you have another man? His words caught me off guard, and I couldn't comprehend what he was insinuating. Caring for my in-laws, who couldn't be left alone, consumed all my time. There was no room for an affair. However, Daniel seemed oblivious to the sacrifices I made, barely touching the meals I prepared and retreating to bed early. Despite my inner turmoil, I attempted to clarify the misunderstanding. No, I absolutely don't have the luxury for that, I protested, my frustration mounting. Even with grocery shopping, I only spend about 30 minutes at the nearby market. I reminded him of my dedication to caring for his parents, hoping he would understand, but his accusations persisted, fueled by rumors he had heard. Shut up. There are people who claim they've seen you with another man, and I'll never forgive you, he spat out, pushing me further into confusion. The accumulated fatigue and stress overwhelmed me, causing dizziness to set in. I can't handle this anymore, I thought. Desperately, needing an escape, snatching my handbag and jacket, I bolted towards the front door, desperate for some fresh air. See, you're going to meet that man, aren't you? Isn't that right? Daniel's accusations followed me as I fled the house, running until his voice faded into the distance. Shocked and breathless, I realized I had forgotten to breathe amidst the chaos. When Daniel's voice faded into the night and I found myself walking in the gentle breeze, my thoughts swirled with uncertainty. Despite my hesitations, I decided to reach out to Emma, my daughter who lived alone. Hello, Mom, it's been a while. Her voice greeted me warmly, but as soon as I heard her, tears began to flow uncontrollably. I struggled to articulate the situation through sobs, overwhelmed by emotion. Whoa, Mom, what happened? Are you okay? Calm down. Let's start by calming down, okay? Emma's reassuring words attempted to soothe my distress, her concern palpable even through the phone line. Eventually, I found myself in a park, seeking solace on a bench amidst my tears. Emma stayed on the line, offering comfort and support. After some time, I managed to regain composure and speak again. No, it's okay. Where are you now? Emma inquired gently. I'm at the park near our house right now, I replied, memories flooding back when I remembered our times there together. Is Zest the diner still there? She asked. And when I glanced across the street, I confirmed its presence. I'll come pick you up. Just go into the diner and wait for me. You can order something if you want. I'll pay for it, Emma offered without hesitation. Grateful for her kindness, I agreed and entered the diner. About an hour later, Emma arrived, her concern evident as she observed my tear-streaked face. Mom, something serious must have happened. You were crying so much, she remarked gently, thanking her. I recounted the distressing encounter with Daniel. Emma listened intently, her serious gaze never wavering. After finishing her coffee, she suggested, Mom, first of all, stay at my place starting from today. You don't need to go back to that place. Also, there are a few things I'm curious about, so why don't we head back to my place for a bit? Feeling grateful for Emma's strength and dependability, I couldn't help but worry about the ongoing care of my in-laws. However, in that moment, her support was a beacon of hope in the midst of uncertainty. Exhaustion weighed heavily on me, and I knew I couldn't continue on my own, surrendering to the need for rest. I leaned on Emma for support that day. Thank you. I'll take you up on your offer, I expressed when we exited the cafe. Emma gently took my hand and hailed a taxi to head back to her apartment. Emma had carved out a career as a writer for a camping magazine, a passion she had always pursued fervently. Her love for camping led her to embark on solo trips, sharing her adventures through her blog and social media. Originally employed in a corporate role, the recent surge in camping's popularity prompted her transition to freelance writing. Her knack for storytelling in connection with nature made it a fitting career choice. When we settled in for the night, Emma initiated a conversation. You've always devoted yourself to Dad and the in-laws. Mom, it's unthinkable that they would suspect you now, she remarked softly, switching off the lights. Her words resonated with me, and I listened as she continued, her insights piercing through the darkness of our shared room. You know, ever since I was little, I found the way the in-laws treated you odd, Emma confessed. Her observation surprised me, but it also highlighted her astute understanding of our family dynamics. Moreover, Dad's attitude toward you is strange too. He treats you like a maid, and even when the in-laws are being mean to you, he doesn't intervene," she added, her concern evident. Attempting to defend him, I mentioned his busy schedule. But Emma's response silenced me. "That's the thing that's bothering me," she sighed, her worry palpable. Sensing my fatigue, she redirected the conversation, urging me to rest. 3 days passed since I began staying with Emma. As I prepared dinner one evening, Emma returned from a reporting assignment, complimenting the aroma of my cooking. "Oh, what a wonderful smell. Your cooking always smells the best, Mom," she praised. It had been years since I heard those words, and they warmed my heart. "Let's eat while it's hot," I suggested, serving the loaded potato soup. Emma eagerly dug in, savoring each bite. After dinner, she helped with the dishes, and we shared a moment of quiet contentment in each other's company. She set down a steaming cup of coffee and a sealed envelope on the table before taking her seat, her expression serious. "Mom, I need you to stay calm when you hear this," she began, her words laced with urgency. "I've actually enlisted the help of a detective to investigate Dad's activities over the past 3 days." The revelation caught me so off guard that I almost choked on my soup. "Wait, investigate Dad? What do you mean?" I asked, my confusion evident. After hearing your concerns and observing Dad's behavior, I became curious. Why does he always come home late? And who was the one spreading rumors about you walking with another man? Emma's astute intuition had led her to connect the dots between Daniel's peculiar actions and potential infidelity. With her wide network of connections as a writer, she had found a private investigator through her contacts. "Please, just listen," she urged, her tone solemn. "According to the investigator's report, Dad has been having an affair with another woman." My mind went blank at the revelation. Not only had Daniel suspected me of infidelity, but he himself was engaged in an extramarital affair. Emma showed me the damning evidence, photos and reports provided by her source. In one photo, Daniel was seen intimately entwined with a woman named Lily, who appeared much younger than her actual age of 51. Lily worked at a bar near her house, a place Daniel frequented regularly. Despite her age, she exuded a youthful aura, clad in a flamboyant dress against a backdrop of red roses. It was evident that Daniel had formed a close bond with her over the years. Emma relayed the investigator's findings with a matter-of-fact demeanor, but the betrayal cut deep. "Can you believe he would do this to us?" she asked incredulously. "While Mom tirelessly cares for Grandma and Grandpa every day, he's out there having an affair with another woman. It's truly unbelievable," I murmured, feeling the weight of the revelation settle heavily upon me. Amidst the chaos of daily life, I had never even entertained the thought of such betrayal. I once questioned if I was to blame when Daniel suspected me of infidelity, but now, anger simmers within me at his callous actions. It appears that for the past 3 days, Dad has been frequenting Lily's house. Shockingly, he's entrusted the care of Grandma and Grandpa to someone who isn't even a professional caregiver, leaving his own parents vulnerable while he indulges in his affair. The realization leaves me deeply disappointed. I never imagined Daniel capable of such deceit. My perception of marriage has always been tainted, feeling more like an employer-employee dynamic between us. "Emma, you were right," I concede, my resolve hardening. "I want a divorce from that man, and I want to make him pay." "If that's what you want, Mom, I'll stand by you," Emma assures me. Together, we embark on planning our revenge against Daniel and Lily. We enlist the help of the private investigator who initially uncovered Daniel's affair, urging them to gather more evidence. Soon, definitive proof emerges, including a photo of Daniel and Lily shamelessly kissing in public outside the bar where she works. The audacity of their actions leaves me speechless. Furthermore, the investigator infiltrates the bar and records a conversation between Daniel and Lily. "Has your wife left and not returned?" Lily inquires. "It's refreshing without that boring woman around." Daniel responds dismissively, confident that I wouldn't dare touch his retirement fund. He belittles my career choices, unaware of the storm that's brewing. The betrayal is profound, but so is our commitment to justice. Lily surmised. She probably doesn't even know she can claim some amount. "Hey, you're accurate. I'll use your severance salary to reserve that opulent hotel straight now." How thrilling it is to view the city lights at Night, will you be visiting tonight? Daniel enthusiastically replied, yeah. Of course, my feelings toward Daniel became more complex, a mix of resentment and wrath. With each piece of information like this that came to light, I sought legal advice regarding a divorce once I had accumulated sufficient evidence. Naturally, I might demand restitution for emotional pain and a portion of the property given Daniel's blatant infidelity. The attorney also said I might sue Lily, Daniel's mistress, for damages. Moreover, since Daniel had abandoned my in-laws, leaving me to take care of them, I could also ask for reimbursement for that, but I needed evidence to refute the accusation that I was having an affair. I took recorded footage from the security camera Emma had set up when she moved back home 2 years ago to keep an eye on our in-laws. I had never really understood how it worked and had completely forgotten about it. Even though she had had it properly installed, Emma claims that the information obtained by the security camera was kept for a full year in a remote data center. Emma took care of the money and the service, so Daniel never knew it existed. Emma helped us get access to the recorded data, which showed how my caring responsibilities had effectively made me a housewife. The verbal abuse I suffered from my in-laws was also captured on tape. Even the moment I stormed out of the house was perfectly captured on tape. Their sheer audacity was astounding. There was no denying the agony they caused. I couldn't bring myself to watch the footage, but Emma, who had seen it, was visibly livid. After making all these preparations, just as we were about to enact our plan, I received a call from Daniel. Hey, Emily, when are you going to stop avoiding me? We need to talk. Come to the local Zest at 3 p.m. this Sunday, Daniel said, displaying no concern for my well-being. Yes, understood. I replied tersely before hanging up. Don't worry, Mom, I'll be with you, Emma reassured me as she quickly made a call to the lawyer. On Sunday at 3 p.m., Emma and I arrived at Zest on time, scanning the restaurant for Daniel. However, he was nowhere in sight. We took our seats and waited. After about an hour, I spotted Daniel outside the restaurant entrance. With him was a woman who must have been Lily. Despite the daylight, Daniel shamelessly hugged her before entering the restaurant with a smug expression. He sat down in front of us as if nothing was wrong. After noticing us, Daniel said, "Oh, Emma, you're here too," oblivious to our critical looks. Daniel announced, "Emily, I've decided to divorce you, in a serious manner. Is that so?" I accepted the divorce papers he held out to me and replied coldly. Daniel said, "I've already filled them out." Understood, I said, not letting up. Daniel declared with assurance, "The savings and retirement money are all mine." "No, that is purely self-serving," I firmly said. "I am entitled to alimony and a fair share of our possessions. You were just after my money, weren't you?" Daniel made a charge. "I regret to inform you that I will not be giving you any money. You can depend on welfare to survive," he angrily shot out. I had been my controlling husband's caregiver for 30 years, even taking care of his mistreated parents. I had no pity for him or his lover anymore, not after witnessing his adultery and haughtiness. "To be honest, I'd like you to meet someone," I said. "What? How come you've met a new man?" Daniel sneered. Daniel turned pale at the man seated beside me. "Daniel, your wife was telling the truth," he replied. "Why is the department head here?" Daniel inquired, clearly trembling. When I explained, this man was the head of the department at the company where Daniel worked, Daniel's expression changed to one of comprehension. "I just got a call from your wife's attorney saying that you might be getting a divorce soon because of your adultery. There were worries expressed that you would use your mistress's retirement funds. A temporary freeze on your retirement money was requested by the attorney. You told Daniel this news at work, Emily, and he seemed shocked." Our department leader stepped in and pointed out that this was a first for us. "I decided to join the discussion called by your wife's attorney regarding a possible fraudulent seizure notice. Despite your accusations of infidelity against me to evade alimony, I sought the truth." Upon my arrival, your lawyer brought in Lily, Daniel's mistress, who was also implicated in the case. Amidst the tension, Daniel's department head left, and the lawyer took a seat beside me. The lawyer outlined the claim: $60,000 in alimony from Daniel for adultery and for burdening Emily with care responsibilities for his parents. Additionally, $30,000 from Lily for engaging in adultery with a married man, leading to the breakdown of Emily's marriage. In a moment of high drama, Lily slapped Daniel upon hearing the accusations. Amidst his tears, Daniel confessed, regretting his actions. Witnessing this unpleasant scene, I Reflected on the 30 years spent with him, we presented evidence of Daniel and Lily's affair, and the meeting was adjourned. Later, I learned Lily and her parents visited the law office, agreeing to pay the alimony. Seeing Daniel's pitiful state at the restaurant, Lily's affection for him waned, and she ended their relationship. Surprisingly, Daniel didn't contest the claims, and if he fails to pay, his seized retirement fund will be used to fulfill the obligations. I pondered whether his screams echoed the pain of caring for his parents. Since then, I've distanced myself from that responsibility. Initially, I tended to them out of love for Daniel and respect for his family, but without that affection, the unpaid labor felt unbearable. Daniel had a habit of shirking his responsibilities onto me, so it seemed only fair that he take on the role of caregiver. The elder care surveillance Emma had installed was removed by a contractor on the day of their diner meeting, ensuring Daniel remained oblivious to our situation. Eventually, I moved into Emma's place, finding solace and support in her presence. It was through her assistance that I could retaliate against my husband's neglect. While it's often said that children are treasures, to me, Emma feels more like an angel than a mere treasure. This incident forced me to recognize the extent of my neglect towards Emma as her mother. I'm determined to make amends by spending quality time with her and creating lasting memories. Together, my name is Amy Clark, a 28-year-old office manager at my father's construction company. I'm on the brink of marriage to George Brown, a college classmate who confessed his feelings for me. After dating, we now share a home and are eagerly preparing for our upcoming wedding. While George commutes to New York City for work, I stay local and drive to the family business, even though I stand at only 5 feet 1 inch. With a youthful appearance, I surprise many with my crane license and love for cars. Cultivated through my father's company as I operated a crane at a construction site in my work attire, I often found it amusing to observe people's reactions. One day, as I prepared to head out for some shopping, my best friend Megan Flynn accompanied me. Megan and I have been inseparable since elementary school, even attending the same college. She's my confidant, with whom I can share anything. We planned to visit a recently opened outlet mall in the neighboring state, which was a bit of a drive, but we looked forward to the journey. We decided to meet up at the convenience store, where I found Megan waiting with a coffee in hand. "Sorry to keep you waiting," I said. "Did you wait long?" Megan replied, "No, I just bought a coffee. Want some, Amy?" The aroma of Megan's coffee tempted me, so I gladly accepted her offer. "Thanks. Could you grab one for me too?" "I'll set the navigation system," I said. Megan happily went back into the convenience store while I began setting up the car's GPS. When I fiddled with the touchscreen, I accidentally pressed the history button. "Darn it, this touch panel is so sensitive," I muttered, attempting to switch the screen back. However, my attention was caught by a surprising entry in the history: Hotel Lovely Chateau. I had never searched for such a thing before. "This is my car, but George occasionally uses it too. No biggie," I thought, dismissing it and continued setting our destination. On our way to the outlet mall, Megan suddenly pointed out near an exit ramp, look, Lovely Chateau Hotel." What a cheesy name for a hotel these days. Recalling the search history entry, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of concern. Despite our laughter at the hotel's name, I couldn't shake off the unease. After completing our shopping and dropping Megan off at home, I returned home alone. Once there, I couldn't resist checking the car's navigation system again. Lovely Chateau Hotel, I searched, and indeed, it showed the location near the exit ramp. It was undoubtedly the same hotel from the search history. It was undoubtedly one of those types of hotels that raised eyebrows. I couldn't shake the question of why George had searched for that specific hotel. Deciding to keep a close eye on his activities, I broached the topic of installing a dash cam in my car. George agreed, reasoning that it's a common safety measure nowadays, but reminded me that since it's my car, I would bear the cost. Although the car is registered in my name, George also uses it occasionally, so he contributed a bit to the installation cost. The following day after work, I headed straight to the dealership and had a dash cam installed. The dash cam featured cameras facing the front, back, and interior of the car, with a recording time of 5 hours before overwriting previous footage. Additionally, I decided to include a GPS logger to track the vehicle's movements after George used the car. I diligently checked the dash cam footage and GPS logger data. Since George mainly used the car on his days off, he always sought permission beforehand. One weekend, he asked to use the car, mentioning a trip to the same shopping mall I had visited the previous week with a friend from work. As planned, George set off on Saturday and returned in the evening. Waiting for the opportune moment, I pretended to retrieve something from the car and discreetly retrieved the memory card and GPS logger. Once George had retired for the night, I meticulously examined the data. The GPS logger confirmed his trip to the shopping mall, but it also revealed a detour on the way back, leading to an exit at an interchange, right by the lovely Chateau Hotel. This discovery left me stunned and suspicious, especially with our wedding looming just a month away. With trembling fingers, I sifted through the data on the device, preparing myself for what the memory card might reveal. I plugged the device into the computer and hit play, expecting to review the recorded content. Suddenly, a peculiar scene unfolded on the screen. A woman, unfamiliar to me, occupied the passenger seat. She exuded a flamboyant aura, her lengthy hair framing a face that appeared older than mine, yet her occasional smile betrayed a hint of innocence. Caught off guard, I found myself unable to process the situation, transfixed by the unfolding conversation captured on the recording. "Really, you're such a bad boy, you're getting married next month, and you're still up to these antics," the woman chided, punctuating her words with a laugh. "It's all good. The reason I'm marrying her is because her dad's the boss. He's a construction contractor, but he's loaded." George's voice echoed from the playback. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. George, my fiancé, was being unfaithful. He planned to marry me solely for the opportunity to seize control of my father's company. "But once you're married, doesn't that mean we're over?" the woman queried. "No way, you're the real deal for me. I plan on divorcing her after a year or so. Of course, I'll make it look like she's the bad one and snag hefty alimony and her parents' wealth. After that, I'll be with you," George assured her. The scene unfolded further, revealing their plans to continue their relationship clandestinely until George could execute his scheme. My heart sank when I realized the depth of his betrayal. I stopped the playback, unable to bear any more revelations. The proposal he made during our birthday celebration at the Seaview Hotel, the affectionate gestures, all of it was a charade. Tears blurred my vision when I confronted the truth. The next day, I feigned preparations for the wedding, claiming I needed time with my parents to cool off. George's indifferent response only confirmed my suspicions. Returning to my parents' home, I cloaked my turmoil under the guise of pre-wedding jitters. They welcomed me back with open arms, unaware of the storm raging within me. Days passed, and amidst the turmoil, a message from my best friend, Megan, illuminated my phone screen. Feeling the weight of my burden lift, I confided in Megan, pouring out the truth of George's betrayal. Without hesitation, Megan offered her unwavering support. "Okay, I'll come over tonight. Let's drink until dawn," she declared with a mischievous glint in her eye. Despite her adorable appearance, Megan possessed a certain tomboyish charm that I adored. With a plan in motion, I informed my parents of a last-minute bachelorette party. Securing their reluctant approval, Megan arrived, armed with bags filled with drinks and snacks, ready to lift my spirits. "Mom, I'm borrowing Amy for the night. It might get a bit rowdy, so please bear with us," Megan quipped, her infectious humor lighting up the room. My mother, ever the gracious host, offered us a hearty stew and snacks, ensuring we were well fed for the night ahead. "Thank you for the stew. It smells delicious, and will gladly accept," I expressed my gratitude, accepting the warm offering. As the night progressed, Megan suggested inviting another friend, Jane, to join our impromptu gathering. Jane, a high school classmate and coincidentally a wedding planner at the venue we had booked, added an unexpected twist to the reunion. It turned out she and Megan had crossed paths several times, sharing memories of their school days when we prepared for the upcoming wedding. It was just the three of us at first, and once we got comfortable, I showed Megan and Jane the dashcam video. Megan surprised me with her response, "Oh, I recognize this individual. She's Grace, a junior from our college club." Megan introduced herself, pointing out to me that since Grace wasn't a member of the group, Amy wouldn't know her. I was shocked to learn that Grace, who I had assumed to be older than I was in fact George's junior. Even though she always seemed older than she actually was, the news nonetheless took her by surprise. Poking a radish out of the stew, Megan went on, "She's invited to the wedding. There will be most of the club members present," Jane complained, a woman renowned for having a strong sense of fairness. "Isn't this scenario frustrating?" crushing an empty beer can in her fist. She exclaimed, "I want to get back at her somehow." Her prior experiences of speaking out against injustice had given her a strong sense of determination. Ever the strategist, Megan came up with a strategy quickly. "Let's sabotage the nuptials," she said. "I have a plan." Taking out a piece of paper and beginning to scribble down thoughts, Megan and Jane emphasized the value of Amy's participation and asked for her assistance. Jane's role as the wedding coordinator gave their plan an essential component that increased the likelihood of success. After they agreed to work together, the plan began to take shape. I watched Megan and Jane fall asleep, the effects of alcohol taking their toll. I tucked them under covers and said a silent prayer of thanks before going to bed with them, even though I was drunk. I felt a wave of relief when I got back to George's apartment the following day. I decided to watch the recorded video again and implement my first plan. It was Megan who stumbled upon it. One evening after work, I decided to dine out. I met George at the station, drove him to the diner in my car, and enjoyed a meal together. Upon returning home, I let George out first before parking the car and heading back to the room. With a burst of excitement, I entered the living room and exclaimed, "George, to prepare something like this for me without even telling me, huh?" George made a peculiar noise in response to my sudden outburst. "Isn't this a gift for me? I found it in the car," I continued, presenting him with a paper bag containing a luxury brand bag, its name boldly printed on the packaging. I was going to clean the rear window of the car because it was dirty, and when I tried to pull out the cleaning tools from the floor, this was there. "Oh, George, you hid it there to surprise me, didn't you?" "Sorry, I found it," I pretended innocence, amplifying my delight. George stumbled over his words. "No, that is," he began before I interjected. "Do you have someone else to send such a thing to?" "Don't be silly. I have no one but Amy." "Right, you bought it for me, didn't you? How much did this expensive thing cost?" George hesitated, then confessed, "Around $2,000. Well, I thought this would suit Amy, so I bought it. I really intended to surprise you, but, well, it didn't go as planned." I feigned understanding, though a pang of disappointment lingered. "Yes. It seems a bit youthful," I conceded, masking my true feelings. "You can still do it, of course. Any bag would work for you." "Amy, really? Hey, that doesn't sound like a compliment." I apologize. "All right, I'll protect it. Many thanks." His last sigh made me giggle so hard I thought I may burst out laughing. I saw Grace trying to talk George into spending more money on a designer purse in the party footage. I later discovered that he had, in fact, bought a high-end bag and hidden it in the back of the vehicle. I located it and took ownership of it. George sighed throughout dinner, as if retribution was finally catching up with him, and my father called me a couple of days later. It seems like his former behaviors have returned. Unbelievably, he had gone and purchased a new car for himself. Having owned several cars throughout the years, he has always had a soft spot for automobiles. He reportedly made an impetuous stop at a used automobile dealership on his way home from work after spotting a vehicle he used to like. He bought it right then and there, without hesitation. "Dad, didn't Mom get upset with you?" "Indeed, she did. Still, it's not a huge deal. I've always wanted to possess a Type R, which is a car that has been discontinued. I bought it there because I knew that if I missed this chance, I might never receive another. I'm eagerly awaiting its delivery." "Are you serious? But have you thought about what you'll do with your present vehicle?" "Yes. Please accept it from me. It still looks fantastic and is capable of withstanding today's cheap automobiles." "Is that the hatchback, correct?" I suppose I've grown a bit tired of it." "All right, just get rid of it. How is it that you like to drive such a shoddy automatic vehicle?" That's when it dawned on me. "All right, I understand. That's what I'll do. Regards, Dad." "Next week, the new car is delivered, then you can pick it up. I'll take care of the cleaning." "Okay, but this is your last indulgence, right, Dad?" "Avoid saying that. The dreams of a man never stop." All right. Regards, Dad." Unable to hide my smile, I hung up the phone. My vehicle altered in a matter of days. "Have you changed your car, Amy? Compared to the other one, this one appears cooler." "Yes, my dad gave me his old automobile when he bought a new one." "Isn't it better than the last one?" "Yes, it's really cool. Could you please lend it to me on Saturday?" "Sure, why not?" It was like there was a fish on the bait. Then Saturday arrived. George came back right away after leaving with the automobile keys. "Hey, what's wrong with the car? It refuses to start." "No, I'm not a good driver." "Are you unable to operate it?" "Well, then, what's the issue? Did you drive it perfectly yesterday? That's because it's a stick shift, so what's the problem with that? It's just that I only have an automatic license. Yes, it is correct. I overlooked that. This isn't amusing. It's a problem that I can't drive right now. Driving is a must for me. What makes that an issue? Would you like me to drive your car? No, that's not the case. I don't want to ruin your special day. Really, though. I don't mind. No. I'll figure it out. Alright then. Safe travels. I was well aware that he was unable. It does him justice. Figure it out. My father gave me a car with a stick gear. Because I had a manual license, I had no issues. But George's license was simply automatic. That car is illegal for him to drive. And he probably wouldn't know how to operate it anyhow. He has been taking the car for weekly dates, as I had already deduced. Even with that knowledge, I chose to change cars. I own the car in my name, so I'm free to do with it what I like. I think that serves him right here as well. Then, a week before our wedding, I got a message and was told to come to this address. Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm Amy. Oh, Amy, I appreciate you coming. The other person said, not an issue. How did that go? Then, well then, have a seat. We'll talk about everything soon. After that, I was led into a conference room and seated. Let's first discuss your request. Indeed, this was a private detective firm. I had asked to have George's background investigated. George Brown, the topic, was unquestionably at fault. Videos and pictures are safe with us. Do you think they should be seen? Yes, please. At that point, the man took out a laptop, put in a USB disk, and turned on a video. Two people were jokingly strolling hand in hand in it. They went into a lodging establishment. The video was taken on a Saturday afternoon 2 weeks ago, and that is when it was taken. Also, pictures of them cuddling, kissing, and other actions were included. I'm grateful. This is sufficient. I had a range of emotions when I exited the office after receiving the documents. Even though I had suspicions about the affair, it was startling to see the facts so blatantly presented. I made contact with my friends Megan and Jane, setting up a meeting in a pub so we could talk about the matter in privacy. We got together in a private area. I gave them the materials, and we started our analysis together. My companion's reactions to the undeniable evidence were shock and determination. This is unambiguous evidence, Megan said, and Jane agreed. I took a steadying drink of my beer and stated my desire to take him down totally. Could you lend me these? Anticipating to include the materials into a slideshow for the impending wedding, Jane inquired. Megan lifted her beer mug in a toast to our group's accomplishment. Plans in motion. I was moved by their unwavering support and couldn't help but cry when I realized how much they wanted to help me. When the wedding day dawned, the whirlwind of preparations swept me along. Amidst the chaos, I found myself in front of a mirror, adorned in the white wedding gown I had once dreamed of. However, the tears that welled in my eyes were not tears of joy. My mother's gentle reassurance did little to ease my unease when I grappled with conflicting emotions. The ceremony passed in a blur, my facade of happiness faltering when I exchanged awkward smiles with George. The reception proceeded smoothly, though my mind was elsewhere. When the moment came for the bride's farewell letter, I stood before the crowd, feeling the weight of expectation. Instead of reading the scripted words of gratitude, I spoke from the heart, thanking everyone for their presence and support. But unable to muster the expected farewell to my parents or expressions of love for the man waiting beside me, I broke with precedent, and the audience went silent in shock. Encouraged by Jane's supportive nods from the side of the stage, I said, "The real bride is not me," which caused the guests to whisper and murmur among themselves. The real bride is Grace Davis, a junior from George's college. The news caused an instant stir. George had confessed his love to Grace, and my evidence supported that claim. A slideshow of their special times together played as upbeat music started to play and a spotlight shone on Grace. In the middle of the throng, the music immediately stopped, and their damning discussion was played loudly in its stead. Accusations flew, and the auditorium descended into chaos. I gave the microphone to an obviously disturbed George and left. Bowing heartily to his parents, I was quickly escorted out of the mayhem by Megan and Jane to an unoccupied green room where I quickly changed out of my bridal gown. After gathering my things, Megan gave me a ride home, which gave me a brief respite from The storm of feelings, despite the upheaval caused by my revelation, I couldn't shake a sense of exhilaration. Packing my bags, I returned home to face a scolding from my parents, though the severity was mitigated by the understanding that George was the root cause of the debacle. My father handled the aftermath, ensuring that the wedding was called off smoothly and gifts were returned. George bore the brunt of the consequences. His infidelity exposed, he faced the embarrassment of the entire company learning of his misconduct. Demoted and unable to bear the office atmosphere, he eventually resigned. Meanwhile, Grace found herself entangled in the aftermath, navigating the fallout of the scandal alongside George. After all the commotion, it appeared that George and I didn't end up together. Eventually, we broke off the engagement, and I sought compensation for the expenses incurred, including those for the betrothal gifts exchanged. George, having exhausted most of his savings on wedding preparations, relied on his parents to cover the costs. Struggling to find a new full-time job due to his lack of specific skills, he now works part-time to repay his debts. I also demanded compensation from Grace, his affair partner, who had a tarnished reputation and was disowned by her parents. She had to pay the compensation herself, resorting to borrowing money from shady loan sharks. Currently, she works in the nightlife industry to meet her obligations, which, while not enough to alleviate the emotional pain I endured, serves as a form of retribution. With my father's compassion, I was granted leave, allowing me the opportunity to take a trip to Alaska. It seems that heading north in times of turmoil is a common inclination. Feeling somewhat guilty for her role in the commotion, Jane resigned from the wedding venue. In an attempt to make amends, I invited her to join me on the trip, covering the expenses with the damages received from George. During our journey, we met two bikers on the return ferry to New York and hit it off. They annually embark on a road trip to Alaska on their motorcycles, and we decided to stay in touch and meet up again. Upon my return to New York, I shared the news with Megan, who expressed disappointment at not being invited. Consequently, we expanded our plans to include her and organized a 3-on-3 mixer, including Jane. Despite the challenges, I found my spirit renewed. Life throws curveballs, but I resolved to face the future head-on. Additionally, I've been tasked with looking after my sister's child starting next week. As I entered my second trimester of pregnancy, I began to feel some relief, only for my husband to propose an outrageous idea: taking care of my sister-in-law's child. Despite my objections, his reasoning, "You're in your second trimester, aren't you?" He seemed all too ready to push everything onto me for the sake of the child I'm carrying. I couldn't bear the thought of taking on any more responsibility. That's when I made a decision. I'm Anna, and I'm 28 years old. I've been married to Max for about 3 years now. I am currently carrying our much-awaited first kid. Upon discovering my pregnancy, I resigned from my work and dedicated myself to being a stay-at-home mom. I had intended to work until my maternity leave, but I had to resign due to the intensity of my morning sickness. I officially started my second trimester last week, and I can now feel some comfort because my morning sickness has greatly decreased. I believed that my pregnancy would finally be serene. I thought that to be true. Then, one day, my husband got a call while I was making dinner. He looked stern and said, "What?" in a feeble way. Beginning the following week, all of a sudden, "Yeah, I guess that's right. All right, I understand." He appeared to be really disturbed. He lowered his shoulders and sighed deeply after hanging up. "Really? What's the issue? Who was that?" I inquired. "My sister was there." "My sister? How is she doing?" My husband winced at my question. "Starting next week, we will be taking care of my sister's child." "What? So that's the reason we're looking after them?" "Just a moment. Could you clarify what you were saying?" "Next week is the start of summer break, right? I need some peace and quiet," my sister remarked. "Could you look after the children?" He gave the impression that it was insignificant. It was exasperating. I was filled with rage and felt obligated to confront him in order to express how frustrated I was. I said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. Do you even realize how serious that is? And the children of your sister are 3 boys, correct?" "Yeah, I know," he said nonchalantly, "but you're well into your second trimester, aren't you?" "Seriously?" I fired back, my annoyance building. "Just because I'm in the second trimester doesn't mean that my problems go away. I'm still overcome with worry. My frustration is further increased by your remarks." I was no longer able to control my feelings. "Trimeters don't concern me. My circumstances are much different from The average, because I am pregnant. In this state, how am I going to manage your sister's children? He shrugged. Well, what can we do? She said it wouldn't be much trouble. So, you're just going to disregard how I feel? With incredulity, I responded, how can you make decisions unilaterally? You're really bothersome, he complained. Think of it as a parenting rehearsal. A rehearsal, I sneered. With 2 toddlers and a pupil in elementary school, are you really thinking that I can handle 3 active boys at? This time, Max was taken aback by my direct inquiry and could only cast a guilty glance downward. When will this end? I begged, his sheepish murmur. The duration is, about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I let out a cry. That is much too lengthy. Do you really think this way? She said that. He asserted, if you have any complaints, tell her, not me. I became enraged and said, you keep deferring to my sister, Max. Don't you have an opinion of your own? Will you give up to her demands more than you're expectant? Wife, he said, it's something I can't help. She's intimidating when she's upset. What kind of excuse is that? I insisted. Max was over 30 years older than Annie, his elder sister, but Annie had a strong influence on him. He was always putting her wishes first, and it made me feel powerless. Usually, I would just accept the circumstances, but now that I was expecting a child, I couldn't afford to take it easy. With a solid resolution, I said, I will live to regret anything that happens to our baby. As a result of this time, I have to take a stand and prevent it at all costs. I turned to Max and faced him head-on. You must inform Annie that no, this choice cannot be justified. What would happen if the infant had an accident? Are you prepared to accept accountability for it? Why does it have to be this way? I continued, clearly frustrated. Think about my situation as well. This is not a light-hearted situation. If you really stand with me, you must say no to my objections. Max gave a condescending reaction. Anna, you should talk to Annie yourself. Max, apparently trying to escape the argument, withdrew to his room, frustrated by his lack of support. I couldn't believe his attitude of putting his sister's wishes before of his pregnant wife's necessities. Was there ever a dynamic like that? I decided to deny Annie's request as soon as possible because I was determined to do something about it. Making a phone call to her ended in failure. Annie was inaccessible despite multiple attempts to reach her. Perhaps because of the dynamics in our household, she thought her request would be granted. There was more to my resistance than the weight of what lay ahead. Prior to becoming pregnant, my mother-in-law and I had shared care of Annie's 3 sons, which had proven to be an extremely difficult experience. I was gripped with dread at the prospect of having to watch her hyperactive children for 2 weeks. I kept asking Max to tell Annie what we had decided as the days went by, and the deadline drew near. Still, he remained reluctant. She's not picking up my calls, I complained. You need to talk to her on my behalf. Max was annoyingly stubborn in his response. It has already been determined. We must come to terms with it. Ultimately, my spouse did not get in touch with his sister, and the day of the kid's birth drew nearer. Max got home from work 2 days ahead of their planned arrival. I turned to him again, frustrated. You've completely given in to your sister's demand to watch the kids, so naturally, you'll take time off work to help, right? His face went white and he stumbled. What? Why me? I'm employed. I can't abandon everything at once. What plans did you have? Leaving my 3 children and me alone? However, I am at a loss, he objected. We can't make a livelihood if I'm not working. I'm not able to take a quick vacation. Oh, really? I snapped back. So, you intended to throw everything at me from the beginning? Never mind. Simply continue following your sisters instructions, he snorted with annoyance and frustration. That's when my rage erupted like a wildfire. How could he act like this? His inability to politely decline in the first place was the root of the entire issue. I vowed not to be duped anymore. I made up my mind to go back to my parents' place right away. I called my mother and gave her the rundown. Her reaction, though, took me by surprise. I see. But no, you can't come back here. What? Why not? I begged. I'm extremely stressed out. It's all right. Things is not that you should do things by yourself. I'll visit you, she said. What do you mean? Perplexed, I asked. I'll go over there and make things right between Max and the children. A husband is worthless if he is unable to care for his expectant wife. Before I could say anything more, she continued, we need to change his mindset right away. I grudgingly said, okay, feeling comforted by her assurance. I'll be there the day after tomorrow. The call abruptly terminated. The thought of my mother visiting was consoling, in spite of my concerns. Arrived 2 days earlier than planned. At the break of dawn, my sister-in-law left her 3 boys with us, and I staggered out of bed when the noise of the kids' voices startled me awake. As soon as they were allowed inside the house, they began arguing. Hey, I play that game, keep your hands off of it, brother hit me, auntie, I'm hungry. It felt like chaos had descended upon our home, all within just 1 hour of the children's arrival. I couldn't fathom why the arguments had started so quickly. Just as I was about to confront my husband, he stirred from his sleep. Okay, take care of the rest, he mumbled groggily. What? Hold on a second, I exclaimed, incredulous. You're still planning to leave me to deal with this? I don't have a choice, do I? I have work, this isn't a joke. Before I could unleash my frustration, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, my husband said, rushing to the door as if seeking an escape. Yes. Who is it? He asked, puzzled by the unexpected visitor. It's been a while, Max. My mother-in-law greeted him as she entered. Why is my mother-in-law here? Max wondered aloud, clearly perplexed. And why do you think it's acceptable to neglect Anna, who is pregnant, and accept your sister-in-law's children without a second thought? Oh, well, anyway, it doesn't matter, my mother interjected. I'll be taking care of the kids for the next 2 weeks, Max stuttered, attempting to protest. Wait a minute. I have work. But my mother cut him off, her tone firm. You're about to become a father, Max. I won't allow you to just stand by and watch. Realizing he was cornered, Max hastily agreed. Okay, I understand. I'll take a week of paid leave. Relieved, I watched as Max reluctantly agreed to take time off work and help my mother care for the children. With that settled, my mother turned to the boys. Can you boys introduce yourselves? She asked, bringing a semblance of order to the chaos that had unfolded. The uproar erupted with indignant shouts. Who in the world is this bothersome old hag? Their annoyance was palpable, but I decided it was high time for a lesson in etiquette. All right, let's begin by learning some manners, shall we? I asserted, firmly clutching their attention. I'll be confiscating this game of yours, I declared, as a chorus of protests arose. Not speaking very politely, are we? I observed coolly, met with defiant stares. Well, if they wouldn't behave civilly, I'd have to address the matter accordingly. With a steely gaze from my mother, the unruly children quivered, a testament to her formidable presence. It's a remarkable sight, I must admit. Even as her daughter, when my mother is incensed, she transforms into something truly fearsome. It's hard to fathom she's the same person who usually wears a gentle expression. Moreover, being a former elementary school teacher, she possesses an unparalleled skill in handling children throughout their stay. My mother didn't hesitate to enforce discipline. Bedtime was strictly at 9 p.m., and waking up promptly at 7 a.m. was non-negotiable. Furthermore, she imposed a strict limit of 1 hour of video game time per day. As the days passed, I couldn't help but wonder what the outcome of her firm hand would be. Everything proceeded smoothly, surprising even those children who had initially harbored animosity toward my mother. The plan was to return the kids to my sister-in-law's house that day, but my mother intervened. Max, I'm taking the kids to your parents' house, she declared decisively. Max, caught off guard, agreed, promising to invite his sister-in-law as well. With his assurance, the arrangements swiftly changed over the course of those 2 weeks. My husband underwent a transformation under my mother's guidance, emerging as a more responsible and dependable man. Max promptly informed his sister of the change in plans, redirecting everyone to his parents' house. As soon as we arrived, my sister-in-law Annie approached Max with a displeased expression. Max, why on earth are we at your parents' house? I told you to bring them to my place. Max stumbled over his response. Well, my mother-in-law suggested it. Your mother-in-law? Who the hell is this? Annie's words faltered as she recognized my mother, who gave her a heartfelt greeting. My mom remarked, nice to meet you, and she introduced herself as Anna's mother. I heard my daughter has been helping you out. Annie was clearly confused. Hey, hi there. I was unaware of that. Why would you spend 2 weeks with a pregnant woman and 3 boys? What were you thinking? My mother turned to face Annie, who was trying to transfer the responsibility, her tolerance ebbing. Not knowing the whole tale, even my mother-in-law got involved and started asking questions. Annie, what is happening? Have you left the children in Anna's care? Annie stammered as she tried to defend herself. That, I simply requested a favor from Max. I didn't compel Anna to do anything. My mother had had enough of the sight and came to help. Annie, could you please Stop fighting. You've had a pregnancy, correct? You are aware that you must remain vigilant during the entire second trimester. Annie's justifications crumbled under my mother's examination. Well, I made all the corrections I saw, my mother angrily said. That was not for you, though. It was intended for children. If things kept going the way they were, people would suffer. Don't misinterpret, please. Annie fell silent, the color draining from her face when she realized how serious the issue was. My mother-in-law blushed and apologized to my mother. My mother continued in spite of the tension, telling how she had been disciplining the kids carefully for the last 2 weeks. Seizing the moment, my mother didn't hold back in critiquing Annie's parenting, her words laced with subtle sarcasm, even extending her critique to my mother-in-law's approach in raising Annie. By the time my mother finished speaking, both Annie and my mother-in-law appeared utterly drained. They offered deep apologies, bowing profusely in exhaustion. Following the confrontation, it seemed that Annie faced severe reprimand from my mother-in-law. What's wrong with you? Because of you, I was humiliated, Annie lamented, tears streaming down her face. Under my mother-in-law's stern directive, Annie was strictly forbidden from leaving the children at our house in the future. Since then, my husband has undergone a remarkable transformation, becoming significantly more dependable, while my mother's influence undoubtedly played a role. I also detected a genuine shift in his attitude. Anna, I'm truly sorry. I had no idea how challenging housework and child-rearing could be, Max confessed, remorse evident in his voice. Grateful for his understanding, I assured him, it's okay, I'm glad you understand. From that moment on, Max pledged to prioritize our family, vowing to prove himself as a devoted husband and father. Thank you, Max, I replied, reassured by his sincere commitment. With Max's newfound dedication, I felt confident that we could build a happy family together. His unwavering gaze filled me with certainty. Subsequently, we welcomed a healthy baby into our lives, a testament to our strengthened bond as a couple. Now, Max has developed a deep affection for children, even taking paternity leave to care for them earnestly. I credit all of these positive changes to the invaluable teachings imparted by my mother. Above is today's story. If you like it, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. See you next time.